We will walk through a demonstration of the Garage Method as applied in an example project. The activities are kicked off by identifying and prioritizing the business initiatives. With an initiative selected, a project is kicked off. A design thinking workshop is conducted with the business and technical stakeholders working together to understand the customer, identify the big ideas, formulate a hypothesis, and define an MVP statement that can be tested and validated through an MVP build. An architectural workshop is conducted to sketch out the architecture required for the identified MVP. The inception meeting brings the stakeholders and development team together to understand the outcomes of the design thinking and architecture workshops and build out at least 2 weeks' worth of user stories on the user story backlog for the MVP build. Prior to starting the first iteration, the development toolchain is finalized and the development environment is provisioned. With the environment prepared, the development team can explore what is available and brush up on the technologies chosen for the project to get ready for the first iteration. The development tools are accessible from the OpenShift menu. One of the items that has been added is a developer dashboard. The developer dashboard brings resources to the developer to allow them to work efficiently in the environment. The developer can explore the tools that have been selected for the project. They can also use the resources on the activation tab to learn about the technologies and practices relevant to the project. Finally, the starter kits provide project templates that are pre-configured to support and reinforce the various Garage Method practices and allow developers to quickly get started building application components. We will come back to the starter kits shortly. On the first daily stand-up of the iteration, our development pair pulls the highest priority card off the top of the backlog to start working on it. They consult with the product owner and the architect to understand the requirements of their user story. In this case, the developers have determined that the user story requires the creation of a new microservice. The pair open the Starter Kit tab of the developer dashboard to create the new microservice. Clicking on the tile starts the process to create a new repository from the Starter Kit template. They select the Git organization and provide the repository name and a brief description, then create the repository from the template. After the new repository is created, the developers pull a copy of the application down to the pairing station by cloning the new Git repository. With the application source code cloned, the developers can explore what's available. This starter kit is pre-configured with unit testing, logging, API documentation, and open tracing frameworks, as well as a simple example service to get started. It also has a Helm chart and Docker file to support deployment into containerized environments. Before making any changes to the application code for the user story, our developers will register the application with the continuous integration pipeline. Automating continuous integration is one of the key practices of the Garage Method. The pipeline will be registered through a plugin to the OpenShift CLI, OC Pipeline. OC Pipeline walks the developers through the information required to set up the pipeline, from the selection of the CI engine to the features that will be applied in the pipeline. The command then creates the pipeline and supporting resources needed to trigger new pipeline runs when code changes are made in the repository. Now the developers can look at the pipeline that has been created in the cluster. They see the new pipeline with a run in progress. The developers can click on the pipeline to view the details. From here, the various tasks that make up the pipeline are shown. The pipeline takes a couple of minutes to complete, so we'll skip ahead to the finished pipeline run. The test task builds the application code and runs the unit and contract tests that were created by the test-driven development and contract-driven testing practices of the Garage Method. The test task also performs a quality scan of the application code using SonarQube. SonarQube is configured with rules that look for code smells and duplications, vulnerabilities, and measures the percentage of the code that was exercised by the unit tests. Monitoring the code coverage is one way to get an idea of how well TDD has been adopted by the development teams. If the tests are successful, then the pipeline moves on to build the image. The built image is scanned for vulnerabilities before we proceed. This validation and the earlier tests embody another principle of the Garage Method, which is to fail fast and learn fast. The pipeline proceeds to deploy the application into the development environment so that it can be validated. Our developers can verify that the application is deployed in the development environment by accessing the route and executing the exposed Swagger endpoint that's built into the starter kit. When all of the checks have passed, the artifacts are tagged and delivered into the appropriate repositories so they can be promoted into upstream environments. The container image is pushed into the image registry. And the Helm chart and other artifacts are pushed to the artifact management tool, in this case, Artifactory. The last step of the pipeline updates a Git repository that has been created to store the deployment configuration for the application. The developers can explore the configuration that has been added to the GitOps repository by this pipeline. With the GitOps repository updated, the developers can automate the deployment of the application to upstream environments using GitOps. In this case, the application will be promoted to the inventory test namespace. Argo CD is a tool that provides continuous delivery with GitOps. Configuring Argo CD to read from the GitOps repository initiates the deployment of the application to a target environment. Automating the continuous delivery and deployment process is another key practice of the Garage method. With the CI and CD pipelines in place, our development pair can complete the assigned user story and work through the remainder of the backlog to build an MVP that will delight users.